Gold Thread Studios. Mango Hill Police Station. Episode 3. The Duppy That Rang the Church Bell. At 4:11 on Sunday morning, the telephone rang inside Mango Hill Police Station. Constable Kemar Johnson stared at it. Nobody telephoned a rural police station at 4:11 in the morning to report good news. He answered on the third ring. Mango Hill Police Station. Constable Johnson speaking. Sister Cynthia Blake's voice exploded through the receiver. The church bell is ringing by itself. Kemar glanced toward the dark window. Is there anybody inside the church? No. Could it be the wind? There is no wind. The bell sounded through the telephone. One deep metallic note rolled across the sleeping district. Then another. Kemar sat straighter. Where is Pastor Lloyd? Standing beside me in bedroom slippers. Is anybody injured? Not yet, but the offering box is gone. Kemar called Sergeant Marva Sinclair. 10 minutes later, the station's white patrol pickup climbed the narrow road toward Providence Deliverance Chapel. Marva drove. Constable Shanice Campbell sat beside her. Kemar rode in the back, holding a flashlight and insisting that he was not concerned about the cemetery beside the church. I am a trained police officer, he said. I fear living criminals. Shanice looked at him through the mirror. You asked whether Duppys can open locked gates. That was an investigative question. The church bell rang again. Kemar tightened his grip on the flashlight. Providence Deliverance Chapel stood at the top of a small hill surrounded by mango trees, family graves, and a low stone wall. By the time the officers arrived, nearly 20 residents had gathered in the churchyard. Some carried flashlights. Others carried Bibles. Miss Pearl Hilton had brought a thermos, a folding chair, and a large wooden spoon. Sergeant Marva stepped out of the pickup. Miss Pearl, what is the spoon for? Protection. From what? Whatever require it. Pastor Lloyd Beckford stood on the veranda in trousers, bedroom slippers, and a shirt buttoned incorrectly. Sister Cynthia wore a white nightdress beneath a long cardigan. Her mustard yellow head wrap had been tied in a hurry and leaned slightly to one side. The bell had stopped. Everybody move away from the church, Marva ordered. Nobody touches anything. Miss Pearl remained beside the door. Marva looked at her. Miss Pearl moved exactly 2 feet. Sister Cynthia unlocked the main entrance. The officers searched the chapel. The pews stood in orderly rows. The pulpit remained undisturbed. The windows were closed except for one wooden louver near the rear, which had been removed and placed carefully on the floor. The offering box stand was empty. Friday evening's harvest collection, nearly 80,000 Jamaican dollars, had disappeared with it. There was no damage to the church door. Shanice crouched beside the empty stand. Fresh scratches marked the floor. She followed them toward the rear window. Something nearly invisible caught the light. A thin nylon fishing line had been tied around the bell rope. It passed through the missing window louver and disappeared into the darkness outside. Shanice held it up. Your Duppy uses fishing line. Miss Pearl leaned through the doorway. Modern Duppy. Outside, Miss Pearl. I am outside. My head is inside. Marva closed the door. The fishing line crossed the churchyard, passed over the stone wall, and continued through the cemetery. Kemar stopped at the first grave. Shanice kept walking. You coming? I am examining the perimeter. The perimeter is over here. Kemar followed her. The line ended behind a guava tree near the far boundary. Somebody could stand there, pull it, and ring the church bell without being seen from the road. Beneath the tree, Shanice found 2 sets of shoe prints in the damp soil. One pair was broad and heavily worn. The other was smaller, with a broken triangular pattern on the right heel. Nearby lay a bicycle tire track, several grains of yellow cornmeal, and the torn corner of a blue plastic fertilizer sack. Kemar shone his flashlight toward the graves. Whoever did this came prepared and walked through a cemetery at 4 in the morning. That proves criminal intent by itself. When the officers returned to the churchyard, Miss Pearl was waiting. Somebody tried my cookshop door. Marva turned. When? Same time the bell started ringing. I heard metal scraping, but when everybody began shouting about Duppy, I came up here. You left your shop unattended? I locked it. The officers inspected the cookshop. Fresh marks covered the padlock. The person had failed to open it, probably because Miss Pearl reached the churchyard faster than expected and could see the shop from the hill. The bell had not been meant merely to frighten people. It had been a distraction. Someone wanted the district awake, confused, and looking toward the church while a second person broke into the cookshop. Duppy or no Duppy, Miss Pearl said, somebody owes me for that padlock. By sunrise, the officers had established that the church had 3 keys. Pastor Lloyd carried one. Sister Cynthia carried another. The caretaker, Roy Campbell, had been responsible for the 3rd. Roy arrived at 7, looking worried. He admitted his key had disappeared the previous week. I thought it fell somewhere in the storeroom. Who knew it was missing? Marva asked. My nephew Andre. He helped me search. Andre Campbell was 26 and worked at a farm supply shop near Content Gap. The shop sold cornmeal, animal feed, fertilizer, and nylon fishing line. Andre also owned a bicycle. Marva did not consider this enough to arrest him. It was, however, enough to ask questions. Andre claimed he had spent the entire night playing dominoes at a friend's house. The friend, Neville Gray, confirmed the story. They confirmed it too quickly. They used almost identical sentences. Shanice looked at Andre's shoes. His right heel had a complete pattern. They were also suspiciously clean for a man who traveled everywhere by bicycle. Where are your work shoes? She asked. At work. The farm supply shop was closed on Sundays. Marva checked her watch. If we question them now, they will deny everything and destroy whatever evidence remains. Miss Pearl folded her arms. So what we doing? Setting a trap. Miss Pearl's expression brightened. Marva pointed at her. A controlled trap. By 10 o'clock, Miss Pearl had been given one simple assignment. She was to tell customers that the police believed the church bell had rung because of a loose rope. She was also to mention that the canceled harvest collection had been replaced and that the weekend market earnings would remain overnight inside her cookshop. Quietly, Marva emphasized. Miss Pearl nodded. An hour later, 3 districts knew. At the cookshop, she explained the story to every customer in a voice designed to travel. Police say it was Breeze, she announced. No thief, no Duppy, nothing. And tonight all the harvest money and market money going right back where it was. Sister Cynthia, sitting beneath the almond tree, whispered to Shanice. Miss Pearl doesn't know how to spread a quiet rumor. Shanice watched 2 young men across the road. She knows exactly how. Andre and Neville had stopped beside the shop. Neither bought anything. Both listened. At 11:30 that night, Providence Chapel and Miss Pearl's cookshop appeared empty. The replacement offering box inside the church contained cut newspaper. The cookshop cash tin held an old telephone directory and 3 coins. Marva waited in darkness beside the low stone wall. Shanice hid near the guava tree where the fishing line had ended. Kemar sat behind the cookshop counter. Miss Pearl sat beside him. You were told to stay home, Kemar whispered. This is my business. This is a police operation. And whose chair are you sitting in? Kemar looked down. Miss Pearl poured tea from her thermos. For nearly an hour, nothing moved. Then a bicycle rolled quietly along the back road. 2 figures separated near the cemetery. One crossed toward the guava tree. The other moved downhill toward the cookshop. Shanice saw Andre crouch behind the tree and pick up the end of a newly installed fishing line. He pulled. The church bell rang. The sound rolled across Mango Hill. Lights appeared in several houses as residents followed Marva's instructions and pretended to wake. Andre pulled the line again. At the cookshop, Neville slid a tool beneath the damaged padlock. The metal gave way. He opened the door and stepped inside. Kemar switched on the light. Shop closed. Neville froze. Miss Pearl stood behind the counter holding her wooden spoon. "And you still owe me from last Friday." Neville turned toward the door. Sergeant Marva stood outside. "Stay where you are." Near the cemetery, Andre dropped the fishing line when Shanice emerged from the darkness. He attempted to run through the banana grove. He made it 12 feet before discovering Marva had stationed the patrol pickup across the lower path. Shanice caught up with him beside the stone wall. She placed him in handcuffs without entering the cemetery. Kemar considered that unnecessarily fortunate. Inside Neville's bag, the officers found bolt cutters, a screwdriver, 2 pairs of gloves, and Roy Campbell's missing church key. Andre's discarded work shoes were discovered beneath a fertilizer sack inside a small shed behind his house. The right heel matched the print near the guava tree. The original offering box and most of the missing money were recovered from an abandoned pump house. Andre and Neville had planned to use fear of the churchyard to draw residents away from their homes and businesses. The offering box theft had been their test. Miss Pearl's market earnings were supposed to be the larger prize. By Sunday morning, the story had changed. Nobody said a Duppy rang the church bell anymore. They said 2 thieves tried to use a Duppy and discovered the police were waiting. Pastor Lloyd thanked the officers before the morning service. Sister Cynthia inspected every church key twice. Miss Pearl submitted a handwritten request for the government of Jamaica to replace her damaged padlock. Sergeant Marva placed it beneath a growing pile of paperwork. Kemar stood beneath the bell as it rang for worship. He did not flinch. Not even once. That afternoon, Miss Pearl entered the police station carrying a small brass handbell. She placed it on Kemar's desk. "A little souvenir. I don't want it. It might help with your investigations." She rang it sharply. Kemar nearly knocked over his tea. Shanice laughed. Marva continued writing without looking up. "Miss Pearl, leave the constable alone." Miss Pearl placed the bell inside Kemar's desk drawer and walked away. 5 minutes later, Kemar opened the drawer. The bell rang again. He stared at it. This is harassment. In Mango Hill, even the Duppy knew better than to argue with the police. End of episode 3.